About 2,000 years ago, a man allegedly born in Bethlehem, in Jerusalem, had walked this earth. In terms of physical appearance, he was just like any other man, but the impact he would lay down wasn't like anyone else. 2,000 years later, and that man remains the most talked about human on the earth. He doesn't make the news, but his teachings and words linger over people's hearts. For some, he was a great teacher, for others one of the greatest prophets, and for the most adhere believer, the Son of God. With every passing year, more and more investigation and discoveries are made concerning his subject. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 fascinating stories about Jesus. The New York Post new book makes the case that Jesus was likely disfigured. Everyone knows what Jesus looks like, or rather what we believe he did. His face can most certainly be recognized everywhere. The world is confident we think we know how he looks. But ironically, the world's most recognizable man is someone that's never taken a picture before, not to mention been actually painted before. The images we see all around us are likely painted by an artist's imagination, while the real-life images of Jesus are extracted from the pictures of the actor who played Jesus in movies made on him. This isn't to say his appearance can't be known. Historically, the Bible does talk about Jesus, especially the first 4 Gospels of the New Testament, which were the accounts of Jesus written by his own disciples. Unfortunately, they didn't offer much, if not anything at all, concerning the physical appearance of Jesus. This has left a sour taste in many people's mouths, and much to be desired as the actual appearance of Jesus. For what we know, Jesus could have looked like anything, most certainly centered around a man from the 1st century. In recent years, the New York Post new book has dived into the millennium-old topic to settle the debate as to how Jesus must have looked. Their case might be odd to you, but it's nothing strange to historians. In 2018, British historian and professor in King's College London, Joan Taylor, published a book titled "What Did Jesus Look Like?". In her book, she dived into the topic and aimed to settle the disparity in the actual physical appearance of Jesus. She studied the Bible and several historical documents dating back to his lifetime, but most prominent in her discoveries was the skeletal remains of an ancient Judea human fossil. These remains were buried in the geographical region resident of Judea, as well as those who lived in Egypt. After years of studies and research, she came up with the conclusion that would only counter the widely held perception of Jesus as the man with falling, luxurious hair and dreamy blue eyes as painted by the Westerners. She concluded that the lack of physical descriptions by the Bible on the appearance of Jesus could only mean that there wasn't much to notice in his face other than the ordinary. She defended this logic by pointing out that other biblical figures such as Moses and David, who boast of outstanding physical appearance, had their looks recognized in the Bible. To further prove this, the professor at King's College London further highlighted the description of Jesus by the prophet Isaiah, who stated that the Messiah had nothing in his appearance that one should desire him. She further went on to estimate Jesus' height to be around 5 foot 5 inches tall. In terms of skin colour, she stated that Jesus would have had the appearance of Middle Eastern men. Her average appearance includes brown eyes, dark brown to black hair, and olive brown skin. But her most controversial view would be drawn from his occupation and not necessarily his genetics. Taylor claims that due to the nature of his work as a carpenter and the fact he had worked the trade until he was 30 years old, it was safe to believe he would have been muscularly built and physically fit as opposed to the willowy man we see in paintings. His face might also have had a leathery look from exposure to the elements and stress. Lastly, due to the limited technology in carpentry work then, craftsmen of that time were susceptible to injuries. Broken arms and limbs as well as other body disfigurements would have been commonplace. As a result, Jesus would have most likely been disfigured in some place. For the fact that Jesus was also a human with flesh and bones, there's a huge probability of this theory. However, this isn't the first time that scholars have challenged the physical description of Jesus. The Shroud of Turin. The Turin shroud doesn't get as much talk as other controversial Jesus discoveries. However, it's nothing short of one of the most interesting findings of Jesus. So what is it? It's an ancient length of linnal burial clothing. The fabric appears like a burial shroud that was once used to wrap a man's corpse. But strangely, the image of the corpse of the man that was wrapped up in the shroud had formed on the cloth like a painting. The science behind how the man's image might have appeared on the fabrics continue to baffle scientists to this day. The appearance of the man's image on the shroud has a full beard and long hair falling to his shoulders. He's tall and muscular as measured by experts. The man's image on the shroud appears naked with his hands folded across his groin. What's most baffling is that till this day, the imagery of the shroud is most certainly Jesus. The shroud first came into limelight in 1390. This was when Bishop Pierre d'Arcis wrote to Pope Clement. He reported that an unnamed artist who claims to have forged the shroud had come to him to confess. The fabric is currently kept in a cathedral in Italy, hence its name. The legitimacy is still quite controversial and left for debate, even though a lot of scientific studies have been done on it. The 4 Gospels of the New Testament gave an insight into the burial of Jesus. It was vividly stated that Jesus' corpse was wrapped in a piece of linen cloth and kept in a tomb. The Gospel also testified that Apostle Peter had found pieces of burial fabric after Jesus was resurrected from the grave. There was a separate linen clothing for the body and for the head. The Catholic Church has never confirmed or refuted its authenticity, but the shroud is respected and considered sacred by Christians of diverse tradition. The Sudarium of Oviedo. The Sudarium of Oviedo is also known as the Shroud of Oviedo. The Gospel of John in the Bible testifies of 2 unique separate pieces of fabric found in the tomb of Jesus after his resurrection. The first is the strips of linen used for wrapping his body, while the other is the fabrics used for his head. The former would later be identified as the Shroud of Turin, which we've earlier discussed, while the latter, the Sudarium of Oviedo, this is claimed to supposedly be the piece of cloth wrapped around his head after his recorded death. The cloth doesn't have any image of a man as opposed to the Shroud of Turin, but it is blood-stained. It's kept in the Cathedral of San Salvador, Oviedo in Spain, hence its name. Its history is well documented. Aside from the records of the Bible, it was first mentioned in 570 AD. It's written that the piece of fabric was being looked after in a cave near the monastery of St. Mark in Jerusalem. It was taken from Palestine in 614 AD. In order to save it from destruction during the invasion, it was taken to Alexandria. It was then moved through Africa when Alexandria was conquered in 616 AD, and it arrived in Spain shortly after. It continues to endure further threats, and it wasn't until 840 AD that a chapel was built in Oviedo to protect it. The fabric has lived there in peace ever since, where it's displayed for public viewing only 3 times a year. So what do you make of these fascinating stories about Jesus? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and help us by growing this community whilst working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.